I said, no, man, I just find the idea offensive. Because I'm not full blood, but I think culturally, in my heart, my spirit, I'm native. You know?
No. You can't help it. Like, you couldn't help that your parents may have gotten with a non-native, but I think all in all, as a people, it does matter. Who are we as a people if we don't have the blood, the strength of our nation? So I think really that we should, blood quantum really matters.
I don't think so.
Blood quantum is something I have to think about, especially when the first question I get asked when I tell people that I am native is how much, or, oh, what's your grandma? Things like that. So I think about it all the time, not by choice, but because, I always have to prove something. When I say I'm Oglala, if I don't say anything, people will assume I'm just white.
To be Indian encompasses more of just, I have a card. It encompasses more of being able to not necessarily fluently speak your language, but know your language, know your history, your culture, your philosophies, knowing those things that encompass what an identity is.
Blood quantum is the way the federal government measures the amount of American Indian blood in a person. Shortly after a person of Native descent is born, his or her parents will send a number of legal documents to the Bureau of Indian Affairs in order to prove the child's Native lineage. If the proof of lineage is deemed adequate, the child will be sent a certificate degree of Indian blood card. This 4 by 2.5 inch laminated card is often seen as the quantitative evidence of a Native person's identity. Because of the notion that Native identity is quantifiable rather than qualitative, some tribal nations have minimum requirements for the degree of Indian blood a person can be in order to obtain citizenship. However, the bulk of tribal governments only require proof of lineal descent. While it is understandable for tribes to want their citizens to be of a higher degree of Indian blood, it is necessary to keep in mind that American Indians are already a quickly diminishing race. By imposing these limitations, American Indians are further decreasing the number of citizens of federally recognized tribes, which in turn decreases the number listed on the U.S. Census.
So since the Cherokees go completely, they're just dependent on whether or not you're descended from somebody that is a recognized tribal member, and they are definitely not lacking at all.
It's beneficial to the tribes, especially Cherokees, because I think one of the statistics that I read actually in 98, 22% had 1,200 of degree of blood, and we're still getting benefits.
Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, they will never go back to a blood quantum because the minority within that tribe, if they went back to even a 16th, they would cut their population dramatically.
It is important to recognize the reason blood quantum laws were initially put in place. Jack Forbes, a professor of Native American Studies at University of California, Davis, points out that blood quantum was first used in 1705 as a way to determine who could be accorded the legal privileges of whiteness. Any person with an 8th degree of Indian blood or more was considered Indian and was not allowed the rights of white people.
The history of it all is very ironic to me, especially how it pertains today. I don't think people really pay attention to exactly how it started and what the purpose was for on the origin of it.
If you look at the historical reasons for why blood quantum was instigated in the first place, they don't have a good precedent in kind of our own communities for being something that we use as a very strict measuring stick on who is in and who is out.
A requirement for proof of American Indian ancestry in order to apply for and receive benefits, such as scholarships, has been scrutinized by a number of people within American Indian communities.
Right. Oh, yeah. we're the only ethnicity in America that needs a card to prove who we are.
Yeah.
You know, well, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do we need that?
Yeah.
You know.
As far as, I don't think it's defined by blood. It's not. It's just not. Do you honestly think that whenever I look at skin color or I look at blood, I'm just like, yeah, they're native or not? I want to know your knowledge about the language, if you know the history, if you the practices, and really keeping, you know, what's sacred and everything to us alive. And I think that's what's most important than what degree of blood you are.
Why is that the first question? Maybe the second. That's frustrating. Why should we have to prove who we are? We know where we come from. We know our family. We know our land. You know, we didn't have to do this until other people came.
A government-issued laminated card with a fraction on it should not be the way people prove their right to be accepted into a community. The use of a minimum blood quantum and the relevance it has in the lives of American Indian people is perpetuating the original goal of the federal government: kill the Indian, save the man. This was a commonly used phrase in the 1800s when American Indian children were removed from their homes and placed in boarding schools where they were not allowed to speak their native languages or continue any of their cultural practices.
Even if a person isn't, you know, like a certain blood quantum, you know, like people could be adopted into cultures. People can grow up in another culture and, you know, and still be fully that. But then you have the people who think they're fully that just without having ever the responsibility or obligation to do anything for that community. So I think that's what blood quantum enforced by tribal governments really protect themselves from. That's just really hard. Like it's a colonial construct, and it wouldn't exist without colonialism. But at the same time, you know, like what is it preserving, you know, and what is it, you know, how, like what's, there's so many positives and negatives to it. It's a big issue.
When I'm asked about blood quantum, I kind of reiterate what the question was. It's the tribe's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people's right.
I think what needs to be defined as native is, like I said, your involvement, how you're helping your tribe progress, the history, the language, passing it down, keeping traditions alive. I do not think blood quantum should even matter at the end of the day. The only reason it matters, again, is because this lovely system we have that was created by people who thought they could define us anyway as Native Americans, or who got what based on what they thought was native. So
It is important that American Indians consider the deeply painful history associated with the original implementation of blood quantum laws. In an attempt to exclude the white man, tribal governments and people that take blood quantum more seriously than cultural knowledge and appreciation are continuing the white man's work by slowly wiping out the number of federally recognized American Indians within the United States.
There's obviously something bad resulting from kind of this idea of instituting blood quantum and tracking it, and how much do you have and how much do you not have.
It doesn't mean anything really, and it shouldn't mean anything. So I see people all the time, you know, they look white, they have light skin, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes and everything, but they are really in tune with like their culture. They have just so much respect for their native heritage. And then on the other side, you see people that look like they're full blood. They have dark skin, you know, dark brown hair, dark eyes and everything, and it's like they don't care about their culture. You know, they just go about like doing whatever and not caring. So, you know, nobody is chastising them for not having any, you know, like not having anything to do with their culture just because they look Indian. And then the people that look white are expected. Like you have to like hardcore know your culture because you look white. You need to make up for looking white. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't mean anything like what you look like or how much Indian you are.
People try to define the idea of being Indian through blood quantum. But just because you have that card doesn't automatically make you Indian.